Is it working?
There.
Evaluate.
I believe they're fine.
Okay.
Get your wrist slapped.
I didn't touch the mention is they're having difficulty hearing, that's.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we rise to the pledge, or just after, let me ask you if you have difficulty hearing us either remotely on the television or in this auditorium, please raise your hand and we'll change the volume level of our voices so as to accommodate that. It's not our intention that anyone be left out of the opportunity to hear. Would you please join me in pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll call the meeting to order, and our first item of business will be to entertain a motion to complete the action that we began in an interview session prior to the meeting's beginning.
So
I would entertain a motion from,
I'll move it, that we move forward with the hiring of 2 new police officers.
Conditional employment to William Sherrill and Josh Rigo.
the motion has been made and seconded that Joshua Rigo and William Shorel be hired as police officers in the town of Little Compton conditionally based upon the conditional offer of employment they've received. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Chief, congratulations to those 2 officers and to you and the department for presenting 2 very strong candidates.
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate everyone coming out early for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. By way of announcements, let me remind you that day after tomorrow, we expect any interruption from any kind of asphalt removing material, the church fair will be conducted in the Commons. The Commons will be available fully. And as you may have noticed on the announcement board that Lynch maintains in the Commons, the expectation is it will be the middle of next week that the work begins in the Commons after the stand down from the church fair. Are there any other announcements that need to be
I
made?
just have a quick one. I didn't get to talk with the town manager today. I asked him to call up the firework company and see if they had any dates for Little Compton in August. I know you sent me an email. Has there been anything, other contact?
Have never got any of these thoughts. They did respond that someone to give out with the information that they had.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the June 20th meeting.
Motion.
To approve.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And the minutes of June 27th.
Same motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Both motions carry. We'll move to the department head reports first, that of the town clerk. Let me just say this. That we have before us 6 department head reports, that of the town clerk, the fire chief, the building and zoning official, the tax assessor, the administrator, and the police chief.
Motion to approve all unless somebody wants to pull something for discussion.
The motion is made and seconded. Administrator, would you like to comment on your item you mentioned?
Yes, if I may, just very briefly on the community needs assessment, we had a follow-up meeting today. To determine as to how those questioning over the how so quite very proud.
Thank you. That's a nice recovery from having lost our first advisor there.
We're hoping to have something out. I'm on that board also. We're hoping to have something out sometime early August. We'll get those back and see what the people over 55 want in this town.
Thank you. Any other comments on those? Are you ready to place them on file? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. The next item of business then is to acknowledge that the solicitor advises that the proposal for attainable housing not be placed in the zoning ordinance, but rather be considered in chapter 18, the plat maps. Sir?
Using the affordable housing law as a model. That is contained in a separate section of the general laws. Now, it seems to me that the main. I can't hear it. Beg your pardon. Using affordable housing as a guide. That is a separate law. It's not contained in the Zoning Enabling Act. It seems to me that the main thrust of the attainable housing ordinance has more to do with the subdivision of land as opposed to strict zoning regulations. On that basis, my recommendation, put it in chapter 18, which deals with subdivisions as opposed to chapter 14, which is your zoning ordinance. And I know that there was a motion by the planning board that was approved that agreed with that recommendation. So the attainable housing ordinance should be labeled for chapter 18 as opposed to chapter 14.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is made and seconded, and may I mention to place this in chapter 18, the planning board's letter that includes a vote to recommend attainable housing be moved there when considered is also in your packet. So it's consistent with the planning board's recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Further, under the issue of attainable housing, a letter from the Commons Foundation offering to take responsibility for identifying and retaining the monitoring agent for housing developed under the new ordinance and for paying the agent's expenses. I'd ask if the solicitor has any additional comment to make with respect to that decision.
No, I actually agree with what was placed in the council packet by the Commons Foundation. I think it's appropriate for that group to do the vetting, monitoring agent. I think it relieves some pressure on the town boards and staff. But secondly, I'm wondering if they wouldn't consider actually being the monitoring agents themselves.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Locke. Dr. Locke.
Jim Locke, Quicksand Pond Road from the Commons Foundation. The Commons Foundation would be more than happy to follow the lead of both the planning board and the town council in order to make this happen. So if the town council and the planning board have no interest in doing this in isolation, the monitoring agent, as best we can tell, we don't think it's a terribly difficult process that is going to need an enormous amount of work. But if the town council and the planning board, it's the right thing for us to do, we'd be more than happy to take that on. But obviously looking for candidates for the monitoring agent, and we would certainly run those candidates by both the town council and the planning board before considering writing the service agreement. And so we will follow the lead of the planning board and the town council in order to make this happen.
Under the aegis of identifying and retaining a monitoring agent, you're including the possibility that you would return with that recommendation and then that we would deal with that?
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable?
Do we have to establish an official position, like a board member or something like that to put this in place? Or can you just say that's what we're doing?
We wouldn't think so. We have checked with the lead monitoring agents for affordable housing in the state of Rhode Island. They recommend that we find our own monitoring agent and work with them to figure out what's best for the town.
I think if I understand it correctly, either the town takes it on and then you're gonna have to have a vote and then you're gonna have to have someone do it, or we step out of it and these folks do it themselves.
But we would certainly not do it without the buy-in from the town council and the planning board.
There's a reason that you have a monitoring agent that is not a part of the town government. Very reason to have a monitoring agent. You want a third party taking a look at it. That's the setup that affordable housing has. It's worked. It's appropriate here. So I do think the suggestion that the Commons Foundation has is good.
Further discussion? Yes. Ed.
So Ed Bowen, I used to be at 2 Beach Street, but the town changed my address to 3 Beach Street. So now I refer to it as 2/3 Beach Street. And I want to say at the outset,
Mission accomplished.
I actually want to commend the Commons Foundation for the amount of effort, financial resources, time, thought that they've invested in this. And it is a long process. And we are in uncharted territory because there isn't a blueprint for another community for how to go about doing this. So one of the difficulties with the monitoring agent, and it's a crucial part of the system according to the deed restriction, has to be, as was pointed out, it was borrowed from affordable housing. And so the monitoring agent not only ensures that there is income compliance for eligibility, but it also oversees deed restrictions. If you have looked at the sample deed, you will notice the one huge issue for me is that in the event of a foreclosure, the monitoring agent or the monitoring agent's designee has a right of first refusal. Should they decide not to take that right of first refusal, that the foreclosure process commences and then that property falls out of the program, meaning that it will no longer be deed restricted by income. So the monitoring agent has a huge responsibility. It has, I don't want to speak for the planning board. I'm not the chair, but as a member of the planning board, and I don't think I'm being inaccurate, and if I am, those planning board members here can correct me or Jim Locke, but it has been the impression of the planning board that there would be one monitoring agent for the town. It has been the case that in the ordinance that we sent to you, the responsibility for appointing the monitoring agent was left to the council. And again, the understanding was that it was singular, that there would be one monitoring agent for all projects. One of the issues that seems to have arisen is that monitoring agents are approved by the Rhode Island Housing Resources Commission. The General Assembly delegated them the authority to institute whatever standards for monitoring agents they wished. There are 9 approved monitoring agents. We had been under the impression that when we were using the term monitoring agent, that we were talking about one of those agencies that oversees these. It appears now as though that may not be the case. And it appears that those monitoring agencies are comfortable with providing services up to 120%, up to the moderate income. But between the 120 and the 140, it's again, we're breaking new ground and they're not quite sure how to do it. So my understanding is that it could well be the case that none of the approved monitoring agents are willing to serve as a monitoring agent for the town of Little Compton. So the question then becomes, what do we mean by monitoring agent? Because if the Commons Foundation can't get one of the approved 9, what standards are we going to use to determine the monitoring agent that anyone is going to pay for, Commons Foundation or otherwise? I also would urge that there ought to be a bit more autonomy and independence between the monitoring agent and the institution and a potential institution who's going to be undertaking these projects. I don't know, if I think attainable housing is good for the town. It's going to be here in perpetuity. Putting one agency in charge of their own project and everyone else's doesn't seem to be wise. It seems to me as though we need much more independence in terms of monitoring agent. So I will say that, you know, these problems aren't insurmountable, but I don't think that we're talking about monitoring agent in a univocal sense anymore. So what we really need to do is determine what it is that we mean by a monitoring agent. And I don't mean the job description, but I do mean the qualifications. Presumably, you're going to want to find somebody who can get errors and omissions, professional liability insurance. Presumably, you want somebody who's got a certain amount of liquidity if there's a foreclosure scenario. There are all these things that you're going to presumably need in place and demand of a monitoring agent, but you don't have any guidelines for how to determine who can be a monitoring agent if it isn't one of the 9 approved by the state. My thought, we are having a special planning board meeting on Tuesday to take up the notion of the monitoring agent and hopefully to make some progress. But at the moment, I would urge caution. We are treading new ground, and let's make sure that we do it right.
Do we know if the interlocal trust, for example, offers that?
No,
That
we don't.
they do not.
We do not.
Do we have the language of the monitoring agent in the proposed ordinance?
No.
You have a copy of the proposed ordinance?
Mark?
Sorry.
A lot better at the computer.
I think Ed referenced that there's monitoring agent language in it.
There's correct, but I think what Mr. Bowen is saying is that there is a whole scheme that the state uses for monitoring agents on this that is not contained in this ordinance.
Okay.
So there's no question that we are in fact treading new ground. Only observation I would like to make several observations in response to Ed's very thoughtful comments. The first of them, that the foreclosure situation has been addressed in a modification in the deed restrictions that were sent to Tony, and which in fact allows the town and not the monitoring agent decider of what happens to the property if in fact it goes into foreclosure. And we think that that takes care of a significant amount of potential ability off the shoulders of the monitoring agent. And Tony and Mark have seen that document. And we've actually had it reviewed by outside counsel, and they think that it is in fact well within the legal limits of what we can do, although there's no question that we're going to have to be flexible moving forward here.
The 2-page document that you provided, would it be appropriate for us to receive this and digest it? And it doesn't seem to me there's urgency to making a decision. Rather, it seems that the question is, do we have a job description for the monitoring agent, and does it comport with what either others are doing or what we would aspire to do with this?
So this job description, in fact, as pointed out, came from the language that the state uses for affordable housing. In fact, it's actually for houses that are being purchased. It's a bit more stringent than the state requires, in the sense that you're going to be asking the monitoring agent, the town is going to be asking the monitoring agent to in fact inspect properties on a yearly basis for maintenance, which is not what the state requires or asks for affordable housing that is purchased. So we are erring on the side of caution here, and there's no question that caution needs to be used here, but we believe we are erring on the side of caution. And as far as coming up with qualifications for a monitoring agent, that's actually going to be determined by the service contract. we will in fact require the monitoring agent to meet certain requirements, and the town should require the monitoring agent to meet the same kind of requirements, capabilities that the state does for affordable housing. And we don't know that we can't get one of those 9 agents, but that are approved by the state. But it turns out that while 9 of them, best I can tell, of them are approved, over 80 to 90% of them are provided by a single monitoring agent.
Okay. I'm thinking it would be helpful for us to be able to read this through, develop questions, send it to the planning board for comment, and then return to a subsequent meeting and say, here's what we've learned and here's what we think we need to do for our town. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, I'm just wondering, is that the kind of thing that can come at the public hearing?
Actually, can I make a suggestion here? Because the specific item on the agenda is an offer by the Commons Foundation to do just that, to make the identification. I'm assuming when they make the identification of a suitable monitoring agent, that will also include the tasks that the monitoring agent will have and the qualifications thereof.
That's right.
So the real request, I think, tonight is whether or not you want to delegate that task to the Commons Foundation. And that's the request on the agenda.
Okay. Yes.
I'm not speaking for the planning, but although I'm on the planning board, but it seems to me we have 2 separate issues. They're here tonight because they've offered to take care of attainable housing for us. Inside that package of attainable housing, they're going to be tasked with coming up with the suitability of a monitoring agent. But that's a separate issue. I think what we want to speak of tonight is, are we going to take them up on their offer? And is that?
That's correct, yes. Correct statement.
Yep.
I'll make the motion to delegate the monitoring agent's attainable housing to the Commons Foundation.
Second.
Is there discussion further? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is any opposed? Thank you. Next item of business is a letter of recommendation received from the citizens interested in establishing a proposed historic preservation committee as passed in a prior council meeting. Would you like to speak to this?
The meeting, and the letter is, as stated, that such a committee should be formed as outlined. In terms of the citizens group is concerned, it's ready to go with it. And obviously, the selection of the individuals who will serve on that committee. Group of people who met did not want to identify individuals, but more of their qualifications. And that's in that letter. I don't believe, I speak for myself, I'm not sure how rigid it is, that particular list of individuals, whether there should be 3 large members or 4. I think that can be, I think there's some wiggle room in that. But I think it will be important to have a mixture of people with expertise to serve on it. I have one other thing to go forward. As far as the town council is concerned, what is the name that you would prefer to give to this committee? Is it Historic Preservation Committee or Historic District Committee or some other name?
I don't know. Yes.
I believe the name Historic Preservation Committee came from the comprehensive plan. That was pulled out of that because that's
Okay.
in the comprehensive plan.
My only suggestion would be to add historic preservation. I mean, that is in the charter, but Historic Preservation Advisory Committee. Task is they're doing. I know this was pulled from the charter, but I think that makes it so that the charge is that there's going to be advice given on these things.
Who's the advice going to be given to, Tony?
Town council.
I feel much more comfortable with that. These preservation committee just say, okay, we've done that, so they'll have to. I know he's going to be open and forthcoming, so. But I think the council needs to know what's going on at all times with this.
For the community's understanding, the proposal that was put forward is that the 7 members be the Little Compton Historical Society Executive Director or designee, a historic property owner from the Commons, a historic property owner from Adamsville, a preservationist or architectural historian, and then 3 members at large. So there would be a 7-member committee appointed.
Bob, one of the things that you mentioned there was the Preservation Commission, the first one, the designee. There was some discussion and we had some people at this meeting that were very helpful, but there were some people who were interested who didn't live here. They were here for 2 months in the summer. Some were visitors. I would ask that if you do appoint the historic preservation
Advisors.
that they be residents of the town. The committee can seek advice from these other people, but I don't think that it's appropriate for them to be here on the committee as such. They're best part-time and they're not here all the time. That they might not be here during winter meetings, things of this nature. And I also suggest we would give it some thought that it started out as the meeting started, that it was discussing the historical relationship in the Commons. And then as it got moving, it's going to be in the whole town. I think that I would ask the council to give some thought that when you're approving or considering this, that, a representative from the Adamsville area, the Point area, where these areas are important and are likely to be highly regulated, if any place, or concerned with what happens historically. A lot of the things down at the Point, for instance, they're no longer there. The Folksel's not there. Tony Paris Condola's gone. The Wilbur store down there is gone. It's something to look at. Same down in Adamsville. I mean, Sid Wardell owns and Steve Madden, and they're citizens. They're here, and they have a direct interest in what happens down there. And those are the places I think that are going to, and the Commons. I mean, the Commons lunch. There's central points to be addressed, and I would ask that that they be considered. I would like to be on it also because we have a good deal of property in the Commons, and it directly affects us. But I think other than that, it was a good meeting. Everybody was in the same direction. It was get together more than it was any kind of set of rules that anybody wanted to come up with.
All right, to alleviate your concerns about the historical side, I talked with Marjorie O'Toole. She intends to be the member on the committee.
Yeah.
Or designee.
The designee is what bothers me. And what happened, she had a lady who was very nice, who lives in Maine. And she said, we might want her to be the designee. I think that's a mistake. I don't think somebody from Maine or somewhere else should be on a committee like this telling what's going to happen in Little Compton. If she has an expertise, I would suggest she welcome and her advice would be helpful. But I don't think it's appropriate to have someone who spends 2 or 3 weeks here in the summertime be on this committee.
By the way, if I may reword, you want someone who is able to vote in Little Compton to be on the committee?
Yeah. Who has a direct interest?
If someone has spent several months here and they vote in Little Compton, are they allowed to be on the committee?
That's the council. The council can decide. I just think it's in the best interest of Little Compton.
I agree with you. I just want to clarify. Yeah.
Are there 2 members of the council that would be willing to work this issue and return to the next meeting with a proposed?
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
Happy to do that.
Sure. Yes.
no, stay here.
Okay, I'll stay here.
He and I have talked about this. Now, I'm working in a couple of towns already that have historical districts. I'm very concerned about their authority. Okay. we've got one building held up right now because of one window. Been held up 9 months. And I don't want to see that happen to this town. I don't work in this town. It doesn't matter in this town, but someone else is going to be facing this with their property. I think we should be very careful about what authority they have when you're posing something like this. I think a suggestive authority is nice. In other words, we would like to see you do this. Means more than sometimes than you mandating that they do something. And we have some property, a large parcel in another town that came to us just like that. And we worked wonderful with them. But they're not mandating that we do anything. They're making suggestions. We're working together. It's working beautiful. So I think that we have to be very careful that we take this town now and we say, you can't do this. The window has to look like this. The door has to. I mean, there's a lot of buildings here that need a lot of work right now. And if we subject ourselves to this, it's going to be very costly.
I would be encouraged by the fact that the verbs that are used are these: maintain a list, develop a list, provide information on programs available to property owners, explore the establishment of a voluntary district. I don't see, to your point, kinds of things in here that are in that category. To say that it couldn't morph into that is certainly.
That's what I'm cautioning on.
But you've only characterized the charter of what this entity should.
Bob, it was made clear, I think it was an agreement. There was some language in one of the documents that was presented that people would come up with ideas and then the next owner would be bound by them. That was off the table. I think everybody agreed, she was there, it was agreed that it would be voluntary and it would be suggestion. It's not even we would like. I'm opposed to we would like. I don't care what you like. It's my building. Okay. I can't emphasize that enough. I don't want somebody telling me what color to paint the damn door.
That's not what this is about, though.
Oh, it's not now. It's now, but it started out that way.
Just to
I mean, I've heard,
clarify,
that's not what it's,
the meeting,
there's clear charges here.
at the meeting, we approved whatever was in the major documents from 2018. So I think the committee is prepared to go with that.
Yeah.
And of course, who am I to say what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years? I don't know that.
None of us do.
The mission is to apply what happened in 2018, which is all voluntary and educational.
I think the solicitor's comment title, make it Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, kind of solves a lot of that problem. So it's advice. You've got a historic building, you can reach out to them. If you don't want to reach out to them, you don't have to.
I will join with Councillor McHugh and the solicitor to bring forward a next edition of what it is that's being proposed at a future meeting. I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. And thanks for your work on this. It's clear that people have come forward with ideas and tempering of those ideas to make sure that we don't do things that are not desired will be primary. The next item is to request to reconsider the town's sign ordinance, SIGN.
Yes, the solicitor has reviewed our sign ordinance, and in your packet, you'll see his revisions. Solicitor, do you want to speak on any of them? There's a couple things in here I'd just like to highlight, but if you could start off, that'd be fine.
So what you have before you is a kind of a smorgasbord of sign provisions from around the state. This would be a comprehensive sign ordinance. There are some things that are probably appropriate here for Little Compton. There may be some that are not. But this will regulate just about every sign imaginable, except I spent a good part of the afternoon trying to find the provision that says somewhere explicitly that there can be no signage on public property, either state or municipal government property. And you know what? There's nowhere to be found, not in the Zoning Enabling Act, state property law, which is Title 17. There's nothing in your ordinance, and there's nothing in any ordinance that I could see. So if that's an issue, that would have to be included in this ordinance that can be amended as such. Other than that, to regulate all the other ordinances that you have, there is provisions in there for public safety provisions, for signs that are erected near streets and intersections, too, that cannot interfere with public safety and other matters.
So we just start with that one. That one is 14.7-7. 3, any sign erected at or near the intersection of any two streets or any street and driveway in such a manner to obstruct free and clear vision or erected at any location by reason of position, shape, color, illumination, or wording may interfere with, obstruct the view, or be confused with device, traffic control sign, signal device, or otherwise constitute a hazard to pedestrian vehicle traffic because of intensity of direction of illumination. So that's the only thing that references what you're talking about, public or state.
That's correct, yes.
And 14.7.7 says signs prohibited in both districts. So I guess if you have a sign that's in public or a private intersection, blocking a stop sign, or if it's inhibiting a driver or it's illuminated incorrectly, it needs to be removed.
That's correct, yes.
But people can still put their signs in public or state land on intersections in this town.
There's no prohibition.
No prohibitions.
So was it you that created this document?
Oh, yeah, I drafted it, but they didn't come up with any of it. It's a cut and paste from other communities.
There's just a couple of things I want to just pick out. It's 14.7.3, signs identifying contractor, builder, painter, architect, or other person currently performing work on the structure. Such a sign to be removed by such person on completion of the services being performed with respect to such structure, not to exceed 6 square feet. There's also in here in temporary signs on one, seasonal sponsor signs that we charge the town recreation committee to approve those, but that they just recommend to the town council. The other one is a portable mobile sign designed for movement to a site by truck or hauled to a site on its own running gear and not permanently installed at the site are prohibited in all zoning districts. That's currently in our zoning now. That's not something that you added, so you can't drive around a sign and put it in places. There's no temporary sign should be erected more than 6 weeks before the work, event, sale, or occurrence to which it refers it's scheduled to take place. That's something you added.
Yes,
So
underlined, it was added.
it's added. Okay, no temporary sign shall be erected more than 6 weeks before the work, event, sale, or occurrence. Also, what you've added, no temporary signs shall remain posted more than 4 days after the work, event, or sale or occurrence to which it refers to taking place. And the building official for the town will council authorize request a removal of any temporary sign in violation of the provision of this chapter as authority to enforce such requests. We've talked about intersections, signs which advertise an activity, business, or product or service no longer produced or conducted on the premises upon which the sign is located. No sign shall remain in place in or on vacated premises more than 90 days from the date vacancy. Signs which are pasted on or attached to utility poles, trees, fences, structures such as overpasses and bridges are prohibited. So that was added. So if someone sticks a sign on a telephone pole or a tree, that would be prohibited.
That's correct, yes.
That was added to this. Licensed vehicles used on a daily basis as part of a business operation for transport of goods or delivery of service may display signs that relate to the business. Vehicles are prohibited from being used as signs. Placement of the vehicle is to draw attention to the business or for being used as support signs. So you can't have signs on a car parked somewhere. This is a review of our sign ordinance. I requested it.
Looks like a solution looking for a problem.
No,
I've been 22 years of being on the council. I've never, no one ever come to me and complain about a sign.
I have.
So
Well, it's got, who,
This will go to the planning board for their,
it says creating a visually harmonious environment. Who's the judge of what a visual harmonious environment is? Who says that? Who is that person?
He's gonna get mad that I'm saying this. but it's gonna be Dean.
I think he's back there. I don't think his head's popped off yet.
Story proves our rational. Just a joke.
This review will go to the planning board for their,
I don't know, it just looks like overkill to me.
review.
Went from one page to
Yeah. I
eight
mean,
pages.
I mean, if you want to send this to the planning board for review, or.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Maureen Rigo, 16K Mullen Hill Road. The number 10 under 14-7.7, signs which are pasted or attached to utility poles. When you drive to the end of Route 81, Crandall Road, there are simple little wooden signs that various, a Coxet Chapel. I stopped and took a picture today because to me, it's sort of artsy looking, I guess I'd say. And it's, there are businesses posted on it, but all of them are wooden signs and it sort of points in directions. Plenty of people that drive around without GPS. And for anybody that's looking for, I don't know, I could call up the picture, but Weatherlow Farms is there. There's a Be Kind. There's a Coxet Chapel I mentioned. There might be something about the town of Westport. I'm not sure.
What about all the street signs that are on?
Right. I know for a town that didn't even have street signs 25 years ago, I'm not sure. How long ago was that? I heard you mention that it was comprehensive. It's sort of overkill and I worry about Dean having to police this. On my way here, I also noticed that somebody was selling a canoe. They had a big piece of plywood and they just
Yeah, that's on their residence, so they can put any signs they want on there. This is not on your resident.
I thought there were restrictions on residential properties.
If I may.
Yes.
By design that there's all these provisions in there. That would allow town council and planning board to pick and choose which one is appropriate. What I was asked to do was to get all of the provisions in sign ordinance from the state so that you could take a view on it and say, this is appropriate for Little Compton and this isn't.
So residential have no restrictions. A piece of plywood that is.
It's a
Oh,
whole lot of cases,
canoe for sale.
which I'm not gonna get into right now.
Okay, all right. It just seems like you're creating, something that somebody has to police, and I'm sure Dean is extremely busy. But the only other thing I wanted to mention, and it's escaping me. I think the state of Rhode Island is one of the worst offenders with signs, truthfully. The corner near your house, Mr. Golembeski.
Oh, so.
Telling you that you're turning. There are 7 or 8 turning signs. And in that little island of, Joe Kudo's corner there that I call it, there are 7 signs. 7.
They light up reflectively every time a car goes by.
It's overkill. If some way to tell the state, take half of them out. People understand that they're going around a corner. I don't know. So if you want to worry about signs, my consideration would be that the state has destroyed some of our visual, and not only is that Joe Kudo triangle 7 signs, but the one down here on Simmons has 6. So anyway.
I'm gonna make a motion to send this proposed sign ordinance review to the planning board.
Revision. The motion is made and seconded to send this proposed revision to the planning board for comment.
So
Go ahead.
So Tony, where I live, they actually put telephone poles in the street, okay? And sometimes they're on your own property. I couldn't put a sign on a telephone pole that's on my
Under this ordinance, no, even if it's on your property.
And a tree, if I own a tree, I can't put a.
Oh, that's a different story.
Right now you could, it's not in the ordinance.
Yeah, if you wanted me to put in the ordinance, I would.
Yeah, it's not in this, and it's not, that's just, like he said, he scaled the state, he put everything that he saw in there. It's gonna go to the planning board for their review, and they'll send it up here.
Any
So-
further discussion? Yes.
Somebody wanted to tack a yard sale sign up on a telephone pole, just for the days.
Yes, you can do it. Right now you can, it's not in our ordinance that you can.
But you won't be able to after that.
That's up to the planning board to see what they recommend to us. That's all. It's just a review of our sign ordinance. Very simply. Life has not changed here in Little Compton with signs. We all can take a breath.
Yes, ma'am.
I would say that life has not changed yet, but we are endeavoring to change it. And, why in the world would we let the state tell us what signs we can put up in our town? I believe it's wrong. And we have to do a long time signs of fine.
Thank you.
I don't think that we're allowing the state to dictate our signs. I didn't.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Oh,
No. The motion carries 3-2. The proposed document will be sent to the planning board accordingly for their comment. The next item of business is
Planning board look at it. I think it's overkill, but let them look at it.
the next item of business is to discuss and consider if the town wishes to have a non-binding referendum on the November 5th ballot. Determine if the town wishes to take future action to amend the Little Compton Agricultural Conservancy Trust enabling legislation to include language allowing the trust to use funds for housing purposes.
so I was the one that brought this forward because I think everybody in town wants housing. That's all everybody hears is the church has done it. They say they want housing. The people in the churches want housing. You got the Commons Foundation, you got the Housing Trust. And why can't we do it? We can't do it because there's no funding. So the only way you're gonna get the funding to come up with that is if you go to the financial town meeting. And what are you gonna ask for? $500,000, $1 million a year? It's gonna increase all of our taxes. I don't think anybody in town wants our taxes, especially since we're going through a statistical revaluation. Who knows where we're gonna end up after this one? So if the residents truly want affordable, attainable housing, this is the only way I can think of to do it, short of appropriating it at the financial town meeting. I am going to suggest 2% goes to general requirements of the Ag Trust, which 2%, which a few years ago was 3%. Now it's 4% per thousand. So 2% will still be utilized to buy farmland and whatever else is in there enabling legislation. And 2% will go towards single family and farm housing. And I was hoping to put this on the November ballot as a non-binding referendum question. That way I can get the whole flavor of what the town thinks about the Ag Trust, what the whole town thinks about housing, if they really truly feel that we need housing and they feel that this is the way to go for it. Now, there's a lot of people that are coming into town that are building $1 million houses. They want to close the gate up at Windmill Hill and say, I'm the last one in. And they're all in favor of the Ag Trust spending 4%. They probably want the Ag Trust to spend 5% buying property because they're in. And they've got the money to stay in. But our children and our grandchildren don't have that kind of money. And we have to help our children stay in this town somehow, or our grandchildren. All of us probably have grandchildren here. What's going to happen to our grandchildren? This town in Warren's Point's already turned into Little Compton Hamptons, okay? Pretty soon there's going to be a sign you can't go down there from Main Road, okay? Because they block off the last part of the road now. So if that's what we want, then you say, okay, we really don't want this. But if you want to see it, there's going to be non-binding, and it's a way to get the flavor of how the town feels about housing, how they feel about the Ag Trust. If they say, no, we don't want this, And that means they're in favor of the ag trust to keep using their 4% to buy agricultural property, wetlands, whatever they buy. So this is the proposed language, and I'll get to where I'm going to add something. So this is right from the enabling legislation. There is hereby established a Little Compton Agricultural Conservancy Trust, hereinafter called the Trust, for the primary purposes of acquiring development rights to agricultural property within the town. The trust shall have as a secondary purpose the acquisition of agricultural property and or other property or interest therein, to preserve open spaces, fresh and saltwater marshes, estuaries, and adjoining uplands, groundwater recharging areas, land providing access to the ocean, land for bicycle paths, land for future public recreation facilities and use by addition, and funding for single family and farm housing. Now, I'm open to anybody if they want to change that to housing, to just farm housing, to anything anybody wants. This is open for discussion. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what the town wants to do.
Can I get a clarification from the solicitor on what exactly we're going to be voting on? Are we voting on having a non-binding referendum? Or are we voting on that and also language tonight?
What you're voting on, in my opinion, is authorize someone, probably me and probably Carol, to come up with the appropriate language for the non-binding resolution for a vote at your next July meeting. The deadline to submit local questions, Secretary of State, is August 7th. So you have one meeting in between now and then. If this is something that you wish to pursue, what we would need to do is not only have this language, but also have the ballot language. And that's always an issue. You got to make sure that the ballot language is appropriate. So we'd have to start working on that right away. I do that with Carol. So that at your next meeting, you would approve the language to be forwarded to the Secretary of State for inclusion on the November ballot.
And the language include the percentage, does that include, you could put that in there?
I don't know how specific you want to be on that, because the process to amend the Ag Trusts Enabling Act remains the same. If the council votes to put a non-binding resolution on, if it's approved by the voters. Now, that has no force and effect, but it would be a guide as to what the sense of the town is. And then what the town council would do would be to send a resolution up to the General Assembly to amend. And that would have to be also ratified by the financial town meeting. So it's a long process. This is a first step in that. Unfortunately, we're running short of time. So the motion tonight would be to delegate to solicitor and the town clerk, come up with the appropriate ballot question language.
Right, so yeah, I think you didn't finish, but we have to send it up to our local senator and our representative.
Not now.
No, but
That would be afterwards.
you were saying, did it go to the legislature?
Correct.
They would do whatever they want with it, yes or no, or
Correct.
then to the governor for his signature or not his signature, so we don't have a pocket veto here. And then it would go to the town financial meeting. That would be the last step.
Correct.
Cleared all these hurdles.
Correct.
I just wanted to be clear on the process of that. So I don't know if Gareth, you want to make the
But
motion?
also look at the wording. The wording is a non-binding referendum. Therefore, a council that sits at the time the referendum is, let's say, approved, is not bound by the vote of the people to carry that out. Is that
correct?
That's what that means, right?
So to answer one of your questions about the finances, that's done at the financial town meeting. The financial town meeting can say it's going to be 3% for the ag trust, 1% for housing, 3% for housing, 1% for the ag trust. That's done at the financial town meeting. Reason I want to put it on as a ballot question is I want to get the consensus of the whole town, because sometimes if people are really want to get something passed at the financial town meeting, they'll stack it. You won't get a real picture of how the whole town feels.
Happy to make the motion.
Yes, sir.
We'll-
All right. Yep, sorry.
Michael Ficarelli, 510 West Main Road. I think this is a particularly misguided and short-sighted thing to put before the people. Number one, why would we change the purpose of the agricultural trust to go into housing when we have all of these discussions, which we haven't agreed on, what housing needs to be? So why would we open a checkbook used who, for what, and for what political reasons? So it's the purpose, the thing that, one of the things that makes this town is the preserved land. I understand there are problems with affordable housing, attainable housing, rich people housing, but the thing that is common is the preserved land in this town that makes it valuable. So if you steal that from our children and start putting it in housing, then being really short-sighted and you're cheating your children out of the preserved land.
But my feeling with that is there'll be no children to enjoy the preserved land because it's down.
Yeah.
I will ask a question as a voter. That's how I'm going to ask this question. If some language thereof was on the ballot, I will know how to vote for it. I couldn't decide because I'm not sure how the funds will be allocated, who will get, who will not get. And that has a lot of ramifications, what I will do. I think we can have 2,500 different scenarios, who will get the money and how that money will be spent to begin with. So to me, it's a concern as a voter. I won't know how to vote for it.
Thank you.
So I think that would be decided at the financial town meeting with the voters at financial town meeting.
Hi, Don McNaughton, 551 West Main Road. I'm on the Ag Trust. Gary, I appreciate your thoughts. A couple of things. I don't know the proper process that one would follow to talk about such an important thing at a town council meeting. But I was just in your office this afternoon, Bob, and there was no language offered to me. There was, at that point, there was no understanding what the specific discussion would entail tonight. So I think that if any citizen would come to the town council and ask for such an important consideration, you would require us to provide you something in writing that would be disseminated, that would be posted. And as far as I can tell, that hasn't happened here. Second, correct me if I'm wrong, this is listed under old business. And I don't know what when was the original conversation about this that made this old business?
That's me that did that. And it's because they've been talking about this for about a year. On and off, this conversation has come up where they wanted to, a counselor has wanted to put this on a ballot.
Okay.
That's why I put it under old business. It's an old.
I applaud that maybe have been discussed for a year, but I think this is new business in front of us.
It is.
Yeah.
It's since that he's finally bringing something to the table. I probably should have done new business,
Okay.
but
to be fair, he hasn't brought it to this table. He's brought it.
no, I agree.
So
I agree.
I have a couple of process questions, as I've already pointed out. But let me just say this. The Ag Trust for the past year has been undertaking a process in cooperation with the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. And we've reported on this to the town council. And in fact, we have a date with the town council on August 8th to present the findings of this year-long study that's being funded by the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, as well as the Ag Trust, Conservation Commission, the Planning Board. And the objective is to bring to the comprehensive planning effort data to provide a common understanding of where Little Compton and its real estate sits now, and to bring that information into the comprehensive planning process to aid in the creation of a new plan going forward. My personal sense is that what Gary is talking about is going to short circuit that process to a certain extent. And that's really unfortunate because I think that, as Michael Folcarelli mentioned before we start talking about spending money, we should probably have a plan. And I think that the effort that the Ag Trust is leading is going to help inform a plan through the comprehensive planning process that the community members in Little Compton can then look at, digest, and offer their opinions as to whether we should move forward or something like that. So while Gary, I understand your enthusiasm for this. I would offer, I think that perhaps the process could have been improved. And I would hope that you would wait until we talk to you on August 8th about the work that we've done. And I get the chair of the planning board to agree that that might be a good thing for the town council to hear. Thanks.
You know, I've been at some of the Ag Trust meetings and I've talked to quite a few members. And you know, I've said it before, I applaud Ag Trust buying agricultural land. What happens to that agricultural land? It lays fallow, becomes open space. It doesn't get farmed. In here it says farmhouses. You think it's wrong? The Ag Trust help farm building on a piece of property, even somewhere else, so they can store their equipment on Ag Trust farmland and start to farm that farmland again. Why isn't the Ag Trust doing that? Because
I think that there are misconceptions about the land that the Ag Trust has conserved. Some of it is held under easement. Some of it is held in fee, meaning directly owned by the town of Little Compton, purchased by the Ag Trust. And some of your concerns may be based on easement land to which the owner maintains the ability to make choices. And then the town-owned land that the Ag Trust owns. About 2/3 of our land is conserved through conservation easement, only 1/3 through direct ownership. So, you know, nothing is perfect in this world, Gary. But I have a feeling that if you allow us, we can help educate everybody in the town on the state of real estate in Little Compton to a certain extent, and certainly on the Ag Trust holdings. So I would look forward to the same conversation, perhaps a little bit further down the road when properly posted and we get a chance to look at the language and do some other things. But, you know, I'll leave that up to you folks, but I appreciate the time.
I have a question for the solicitor. Are we required to a town referendum in order to make a recommendation of the General Assembly to change it?
No.
So we don't. Because I'm a little worried here overall I support the proposal for the idea. I'm just a little worried that I just don't want to be too hasty with the actual wording of what we want to propose to the General Assembly, which, and I guess being a non-binding referendum, that would kind of solve that because we could go back to it later and change it at a later date. But I just want to make sure that we're not being too hasty in what we're recommending, how we change the enabling legislation.
So that, the only thing I did was add funding for single family and farm housing. I'm open to any suggestion anybody has. The solicitor thinks there's something wording more appropriate. I'm fine with that. This is just to see how the town feels about housing and where we really want to go. And this is a source to fund it. Now, if the council decides after this goes through, or the town says, no, that's not what we want to do, we want to leave the Ag Trust alone, I'm done with it. I'm not going to fight it. It was just another way to come up with funding to do what everybody says is needed in town. And I know it's a two-edged sword because everybody wants to conserve land in town and everybody wants housing.
So Gary, I agree with the Ag Trust should be putting farm housing on their farms. I mean, I think we all agree with that. But I think what John's talking, who's now the new chairman of the Ag Trust, and they have 2 new members. And this council also voted to charge them with hiring an attorney to look at their enabling legislation, to come back and see if you folks can already do that. Because we really don't know, because since 1985, when it was enacted, no one's really tried to do that. So I think there's new energy there. I think that we've charged you with that. I'm the liaison to the council. I go to your meetings. You've already referenced the $85,000 the trust has spent with Van Buren and the other people for your study, that you're gonna come here. So I do think it's thoughtful and responsible that I think you guys are going in the right direction. And I don't think we would need this right now, even though I agree with Gary. We need to put farmhouses on farms. And they have farms that they're just rolling up the hay and people are driving by and taking pictures. We don't want that. But I think that I would like to see the Ag Trust and see how they do moving forward.
Tony, if we go forward with this and we put something into Secretary of State and the Ag Trust comes back and says, well, we can do that now, by what our lawyer says, can we withdraw it?
You can't withdraw the question. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carol.
Right.
You can't withdraw the question, but it's a non-binding referendum anyway.
Right, and that's what I keep saying. I'm not saying, okay, if this goes through, that's it, we're gonna go forward with it. It still has a lot of consideration to go through, and all these questions are gonna get answered at that time. But what I'm saying, if the Ag Trust says yes, and I talked to Paul Sattel, and he says real property is houses. And the previous chairman of the Ag Trust says, no, it doesn't. That's not what it means. It means land. So we had a disagreement about that. Now, maybe this lawyer's going to say real property is houses or housing. Yes, you can buy housing to put on these farmlands. If that's all you can do, then that's fine. But it's going to put a house that's going to bring a family into it. It's not going to bring an old-time farmer, and it's going to bring a young family that's going to have gung-ho, that's going to raise a family on it, and hopefully they'll have a family. You know, and it'll keep going on for generations like this town has done. So that's all I'm looking to.
I'm personally not persuaded that putting language like this on a ballot is going to get the answer that we're seeking. I don't know how a person looks at this and says, and funding for single family and farm housing, and I'm not offering an alternative. I don't know what that alternative might be. I'm just saying, we're gonna ask the people with a ballot question what they think about something. It would seem to me that the study that has been undertaken will give us more information in that regard. And that we won't be led to a public discussion over, so you're basically going to undo the Ag Trust. No, we're just asking you a question. I'm not sure how you put something on a ballot without someone drawing a conclusion that if I mark this, I'm voting for this. If I mark over here, I'm voting for that. And that's the kind of the instinct of someone.
Well, I think
talking about
it was going to clarify that.
This isn't the language that would go on. This isn't the language that would go on the ballot.
Right.
What I need to do is work with Carol to come up with the appropriate language. And the gentleman asked about it as a voter. How do I know what I'm voting for? Towns are required to do two things in referendums of this nature. Number one, you have to come up with the ballot question. And that's easier said than done. It has to be very clear. But the second thing is you have to come up with an explanation that would be provided to voters so that they know what they're voting on in the ballot question. Those are the two things that would have to be drafted in between this meeting and your next meeting. And there is a deadline looming on it, which is hard and fast. So that's the only comments that I brought up. And, this is essentially the first draft, but it's not in ballot question form. So it would have to be put in ballot question form. And this proposed language for the Ag Trust would also have to be explained so that the voters would know exactly what they're voting on for that particular ballot question. And that's for every referendum question. That's why you have the booklet and explains what the question is for.
I've got an issue with putting more houses up. I have no issue with revamping houses and fixing what's there. I mean, I ran on rural character 22 years ago. And what I've seen change in 34 years of being back and being in business is open fields I used to drive by. Now there's houses sitting in them. Nobody's addressing when does rural character get threatened by housing? It's a tricky subject because at what point are there so many houses that we're not really rural anymore? We're a village. Where is that point? I mean, you've got, no offense, Gary, but you've got Secana Point, which is houses all over the place. You've got Adamsville with houses packed around them, and you've got a few other places. But the allure of this town is its character and is its rural character. And my opinion's changed. I mean, I lived in a house on Windmill Hill with houses right next to me, and I was always annoyed by my neighbors. They were nice people. Just the fact I couldn't go out in the middle of the night and make any noise because I'd aggravate them or something like that. And then I moved to a farm, and then I realized how special this town is. What we're exposed to is the fresh air, the salt air. Nobody is addressing, well, what point are we putting too many houses in? At what point is it going to affect the groundwater? At what point are we going to be able to say, all right, we're not really rural anymore. We're now a small town. It's just my opinion. I just see this drive as pushing us towards something that might make Little Compton different than what it is.
Yes. What we're facing now is the city of Providence, downtown, the state is changing Little Compton. It's changing the rural aspects of the whole state. You'll agree. The new zoning has been written for developers. It's not written for your thoughts or my thoughts when we come home or driving down West Main Road or going down along highway and looking at the trees or seeing deer intermittently and thinking how wonderful it is here. I'm a Federal Hill boy. For me to come here is like heaven. But pretty soon it'll be like going to Federal Hill. It's I live in an area where there's houses going up right around the corner from me right now. And there were all trees on that land when I came here. I'm not one of those people that says I'm here, I don't want anybody else here. I'd like to see proper development. But what they've done to us now, that's why we're going through attainable housing. That's why we have to answer the state. The state is requiring us to have affordable housing. They're stepping in. They've changed our zoning in our zoning. It can change. We've worked with the town solicitor answering all their requirements. And if most of the people in this town knew what that was, they'd be shocked. I mean, what the Ag Trust is doing, I commend them for what they're doing. I have my differences with them now and then, but I commend the work to save our corners and save the little pieces of land we think are special. We have weddings on and our kids have times on. I walk around Young Farm and I can't believe how beautiful it is. It's all saved, Young Farm. It's all preserved. But what Paul is saying is going to go by the wayside. If we're not careful with this town, we're going to be very sorry in 10 years. I lived in 2 other places and it happened there. You can't even recognize what you're driving through anymore. And that will happen here. Make no mistake, it will happen. If we're not careful. And I'm for what Gary wants to do. I understand what he's trying to do to have property that's available to our young people. But right now, there's nothing available in the state for young people. There's no affordable housing anymore in the state. You can't build a house in this state. I mean, the house around the corner from me is $850,000. It's 2-floor, 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Thank you.
So I think.
I'm not done.
Well, how many minutes you got, man?
I'm telling you, you can't buy affordable housing right now. So we should put that on the wayside a little bit because the prices keep going up on housing. nobody's gonna be able to live. Okay.
So I think we're getting a little off track here. This isn't going to make 50,000 houses come up in Little Compton. All this was to do was to fund the housing trust, which the whole town agreed we needed. And the Commons Foundation, which everybody seems to be behind, neither one of them have funding to do what they want to do, that it seemed like the whole town want to be done, but maybe the whole town doesn't. Maybe they want to strangle them and not give them money. Maybe it's a farce, okay? This is the only way I thought could do it. Now, I'm going to make a motion to put this forward and the rest of the council vote the way they do. It doesn't look like they're going to go for it. That's fine. I felt I've done my job to do what I could to bring housing into Little Compton for the young people that live here. For my grandchildren, not my grandchildren, because they've already have land that I already bought for them years ago. But there's other people that haven't done that. And their grandchildren are going to have to live somewhere else while the wealthy people move in here and build these McMansions. Okay, affordable housing isn't going to build McMansions. They're going to build single-family houses. That's what's going to overrun Little Compton. Multimillionaires come in here and building huge, huge houses that don't fit Little Compton. Pretty soon it's going to be called Big Compton. Okay? So I'm going to make a motion that we allow the solicitor and Carol to work on language to come up with this and come back to us at the next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
In discussion, just really quick, Sal, you said that the town's going by the wayside. It's been going by the wayside for many decades. Okay, this just didn't happen today. We needed the foresight back then that hopefully we're having now. And Gary, I think you said the housing trust doesn't have any money, which you're correct. But the Commons Foundation claims that they have money. I haven't seen their bank statement, and it's private money. It's not people's tax money. So that's their own private money. They say they got some money to give low interest loans to people. And I just wanted to correct those few things.
Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion? That brings this back to the next meeting with a revised proposed submittal for the November ballot. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed by nay.
Nay.
The motion does not carry.
Thank you for listening to me. It was a try, so.
Under new business, a request from Narragansett Electric for a new pole placement on John Dyer Road west of AP 40.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
I went and checked it out. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Notice received from the Postal Service of a non-use cancellation of the bulk rate permit held by the town. Question. Is there a motion to place this on?
Motion to place on file.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Announcement of officers of the Little Compton Agricultural Conservancy Trust.
That was a great way to start, wasn't it? My name is Don McNaughton.
It's not going to get any easier, Don.
And
You can ask Bill.
I'm here to announce.
To the fire, Don.
Do I get to rethink this? I'm here to announce the new leadership team that has been elected.
The list that I received earlier.
That was elected at last night's Ag Trust meeting by its trustees. So at last night's Ag Trust meeting, my fellow trustees elected me to be the new chair, Rusty Cabot to be our vice chair, and Mike Steers, who is here, to be our treasurer. Now, Rusty and Mike may be a bit more familiar to many of you here tonight. In fact, Mike is currently chair of the planning board. I just wanted to introduce myself to all of you. I was appointed to the Ag Trust last year by the town council. And over the past 20 years, I have served on a number of boards here in town, including the Conservation Commission, Stay at Home, the Wellness Center, the Kind of Preservation, and I've also served on the board of the Nature Conservancy here in Rhode Island. So I look forward to working with Mike, Rusty, and to working with the town council as we move forward on these really important questions that are facing not only the Ag Trust, but also the town of Little Compton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good luck, Don.
My condolences.
Yeah. The next item of business is to update the non-civic detail rate to incorporate that into the salary and benefit listing for FY 25. The item is not in your packet. It's a difference in the detail rate that's assigned to a non-civic detail versus a town detail.
For contract.
Right.
Contract, so we have no choice in it.
Right. We're just documenting it in the salary.
I'll move it.
All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Next is to discuss an act on providing a letter of support and statement of match for a grant proposal resilience of the commons area, a result of the hazard mitigation plan recommendations. I'll ask that the administrator steer me if I'm mischaracterizing or misrepresenting. What we have before us are two requests for our action. One is that the Little Compton Town Council approve the provided draft letter of support, which is for an MRP, that's resilience plan, MRP.
This has been.
Municipal Resilience Plan Action Grant and Climate Resilience Fund. This proposal will provide increased resilience specifically to the commons. And the kinds of things that will do that are improvement of fire suppression in the vicinity of the commons. That is basically on Meeting House Lane. And because we have a very senior population, it also provides for acquisition of a backup generator for the community center. The change that has been made since this was submitted to us is that now the community center, the proposed generator for the community center is not simply a fixed generator that sits at the community center, but rather is portable so as to be able to place it where it's most needed in the event of resilience affected or not, perhaps non-resilience affected issues around town. So what you have in front of you is a letter of support, and I would seek your approval for me to sign that letter of support. And the second one is the commitment of a statement of match that we expect will be required for a portable generator exceeds the 24,850 and maybe as high, we don't have the figure exactly yet, but maybe as high as $35,000 cash match. In both cases, whether it had been 24,850 or 35,000, we propose that that cash match be made from the American Recovery Plan Act or ARPA funds.
Motion to approve both.
Second.
All the presidents sign them.
Second. What's the amount total? Up to 35,000? Do we have a figure for what we have left in our opera funds?
We have sufficient funds there. We have just so.
We have the what? Shuffle?
Well, we looked at the projects that we currently have and.
Oh, shuffle the projects.
The order of priority.
Thank you.
The motion is then made and seconded to authorize this to be signed by the council president. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is a request from the Nature Conservancy to use Town Landing on August 12th from 7:30 to 10:30 PM for a meteor shower viewing event.
Motion to approve.
With all,
State and local stipulations.
yeah, second.
The motion's made and seconded. I'll ask the solicitor to comment on the matter.
Well, it's something you can do.
Yes.
My only question is in those requirements, is they're also going to furnish the
Necessary glasses?
no, the one day, they'll have telescopes, but the one day insurance, special event insurance policy.
There's an indemnification form we asked them to complete.
Excellent.
So if the motion might include,
Well, it kind of did.
Yeah, they said state and local requirements. That's part of the local
I
requirement.
just wanted that clarification.
so to be clear, the local, state or local requirement will be that, event insurance be obtained by the people that are
Correct.
there, that are viewing or that are sponsoring it, rather. Sorry, Nature Conservancy. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Next is a request from Newport County Prevention Coalition to place commemorative banner and flags to remember each of the 402 individuals who lost their lives this year due to opioid overdose. These flags, if you recall, were placed in Pikes Peak, and that's what the Newport County Prevention Coalition is requesting.
So this says would like to display the banner outside the town hall. It doesn't say Pikes Peak.
We clarified that with them, that's in fact what they want to do, is what they did last year, which was put it at Pikes.
Okay, let's clarify.
I would seek that as the motion.
Approved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the request for posting at Pikes Peak. Are there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next is to acknowledge that a new law, Rhode Island General Law, is specified here, is in effect regarding the use of low-speed vehicles as of July 1st. We were asked by the League of Cities and Towns to indicate whether or not we were going to develop a local ordinance. We declined to have a local ordinance which binds us to the state law. The state law is not arduous. It tells you to keep your little low-speed vehicle.
No, it doesn't. No, I cleared it with the chief. It does not include what the minis I'm driving. It's
Very good.
electric
Very good.
bikes.
I was just giving you an opportunity to step forward, but I
Okay,
appreciate the fact that you didn't.
place it on file.
Yes,
Second.
it is made and seconded to place this issue on file. Is there any discussion?
It is an appropriate motion, but if in the future, these vehicles turn out to be a problem, if you look at the legislation, you can enact the necessary ordinances at any time.
So we can
Yes,
do our decision.
correct.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next is the announcement and consideration of the vacancy in the Director of Public Works position. Mr. Administrator.
As the, your memo states, these will be non-renewable. And I request that council authorize me to advertise for the position.
So moved.
And I provided a chief of time there as well.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next is the announcement and ratification of the appointment of the Finance Director's clerk and the announcement of trial transfer of another clerical position within the town hall. Again.
What I request is that Anita has completed her 30-day trial period. I asked the council to appoint her to the position of finance clerk and is trying to be active in only informational purpose at this time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Anita Kudo to the finance clerk position. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. Thanks. Next, sitting as Board of License Commissioners, the council is requested by the community center for a Class F one-day retail beverage license for each of the following events. The Summer Art Show on July 19th, a summer concert series on weekly summer concert series, August 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. So a total of 5 events.
Motion to approve.
With all local ordinance adhered to.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the request with all local and state requirements in vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, by way of communication, a request received from Victoria Carter to use Town Landing on Saturday, September 14th for a gathering of approximately 30 to 35 people. The solicitor has pointed out that this too warrants event insurance on the part of the
So motion to approve all state and local ordinances.
Correct, but do we know what the event is?
I don't.
That's not second.
Can we ask for clarification on what the event is?
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to vote on that.
That seems reasonable. This,
It doesn't say.
I'm gonna have to
on
know.
Saturday, 9/14. All right. Is there a motion to,
Table?
table this? Thank you. Until our next meeting.
Some
Discussion.
with a request for additional information on the event.
What is the
And to-
gathering?
And to let them know they gotta have their own insurance.
Correct. It's easy to get.
So the motion then is to table this matter until a future meeting to request that the applicant describe the intended use of the landing and to require the applicant, were it to be granted, that they obtain event insurance.
Insurance. So that's
Is
what.
there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is a request for a mobile food establishment license for the Nitro Bar to be located at 260 West Main Road.
Motion to approve with all state and local ordinances adhered to.
Second.
Any discussion?
This does increase beyond your maximum, so I would ask that you make the motion that you're acknowledging that you're exceeding your maximum number of licenses. You've done that in the past.
Yes.
I just want to make sure you're clear.
If you recall, when the whole issue of mobile food establishment licensing came to the town, we needed to decide how many of those we wanted to have so as to prevent every Warwick food truck from applying for a Little Compton license and overwhelming the town with that. So we've got nowhere near that.
No.
The clerk only requests that we acknowledge that we understand we're exceeding our limit
Motion to acknowledge we're exceeding.
and to approve the license. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A request from the LC 350 committee. Town resources will be available to the committee during its Penguin Plunge planned for January 1st, 2025. To be held at Town Harbor, and notes that approval has already been granted by the Harbor Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the availability of town resources for the emergency response. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I know you're trying to get through it now because it's getting late.
I thought.
No, no worries. I won't hold you for another hour or two. My name's, I'm Phil Warren. I was 12 at the 300th anniversary, so I figured I'd come back. Beth Bryan and I were tasked to do the polar plunge. That's our first big event for 2025. And we're just obviously seeking support. We talked to the chief of police and the chief of the fire department. They're both supportive under the direction of the council.
Thank you very much. We vote on that.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
The discussion came after.
Thank you.
So we're good.
Yeah, good.
But you gotta jump in to kind of harbor on this. Okay.
The next item is a request from the Sausage Guy, renewal of its food establishment license.
Motion to approve, but where is this cart going to be and when?
He originally was in the request for this evening because he was going to do the church fair. He's no longer going to do the church fair, but he wants to hold this open in case another event comes up.
Just putting us over the.
You are already over your limit.
Okay.
Can't he just reapply if there's another event he wants to do?
Well, the whole point of applying now is so that you get your license and when the event comes up, you can just go and do it. Like the chicken barbecue, something like that, if they were asking, or if you do have fireworks, you may ask her to be able to participate in that. It's.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Finally, in communication, a request from Jeffrey Yetter to use town landing on August 31st at 4 p.m. for a small wedding ceremony.
Motion to approve with all state and local ordinances.
Getting good.
And event insurance.
We're getting used to that saying now.
No, you're getting good at it. I'm already good at it.
Motion is made and seconded to approve subject to those conditions. Is there any further discussion? Favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar.
Motion to place the consent calendar on file unless somebody wants to talk about.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. There being no further matters before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.